Charles's hand trembled as he knocked on his father's door. The stern voice from inside commanded, "Enter!" Philip was standing, his eyes blazing with anger. "You will give up this idea of marrying Camilla," he said in a cold voice. "It's only been years since Diana's death. This scandal will destroy the royal family." Charles raised his head, looking into his father's eyes for the first time. "I'm going to live my own life now, Father," he said with determination. In that room, at that moment, the first shot of the final round of decades-long father-son warfare had been fired. But this wasn't just about Camilla. This was the clash of two different generations, two different concepts of royalty, two different definitions of masculinity. In 1948, when little Charles was still in his baby carriage, Philip's approach was clear. "This child will be king in the future," he said with confidence. "He must be raised tough, made resilient. There's no place for sentimentality in this business." Elizabeth wanted a softer approach. "He's still very young, Philip," she objected gently. "He needs love and attention." But Philip was determined. "Kings are raised with discipline, not love." He spoke decisively. "I'm going to make a man out of this child." Little Charles's first memories were filled with his father's harsh commands. "Stand straight," Philip would shout. "Men don't cry. Tears are a sign of weakness." Charles was naturally a sensitive child. He loved books, was interested in music. He enjoyed examining flowers in the garden, watching butterflies. But Philip saw these as girlish interests. "This child will toughen up in military school," he decided. "He'll learn real manhood at Gordonstown." When Charles was only 8 years old, the first major conflict between him and Philip occurred. At a formal dinner at the palace, Charles had spilled his soup. Philip's face reddened with anger. "Get up from the table," he commanded harshly. "Such clumsiness is unacceptable." Charles burst into tears. Elizabeth tried to intervene. "Philip, he's just a child." "No, Elizabeth," Philip spoke sharply. "He's not just a child, he's the future king. And kings don't make mistakes." The Gordonstown school years were like torture for Charles. He couldn't adjust to the cold Scottish climate. Other children teased him, calling him soft prince. Every week he begged for help in letters to Philip. "I'm very unhappy, Father," he wrote desperately. "Will you take me away from here?" Philip's response was always the same. "You'll stay there until you learn to be a man. Resilience is the most important part of your character. Don't complain, find solutions." Charles retreated into loneliness. He sought refuge in books, began writing poetry. He secretly made drawings about nature, but he could never tell Philip about these. "Father doesn't understand me," he constantly thought. "I don't understand why I have to be this way." During university years, the situation got even worse. Charles wanted to study art history at Cambridge. Philip insistently suggested military academy. "Art history?" Philip had mocked. "That's not the business of future kings. You'll be a naval officer, you'll be a commander. This is the tradition in this family." Charles rebelled for the first time. "I'm not like you, Father," he courageously objected. "I have different interests, different talents. Don't force me into the same mold." Philip's anger reached its peak. "You are the future head of this family," he shouted. "Your personal desires don't matter. Duty comes above everything." When Mother Elizabeth witnessed these arguments, she became upset. She would talk to Charles privately. "Try to understand your father," she would comfort. "He's trying to protect you in his own way." "But don't I have rights too, Mother?" Charles would ask desperately. The right to live my own personality? Elizabeth would be in a difficult position. Both father and son are right in different ways, she would say carefully. But you need to find a compromise. When Charles began developing his own style in his 20s, it angered Philip even more. His interest in environmental issues, talking about organic farming. Drop this New Age nonsense, Philip would scold. These aren't the business of a serious prince. People won't take you seriously. Charles, however, was gradually gaining confidence. These issues are important, Father, he would defend his views. We have to think about future generations. Modern royalty should lead on these issues. Leadership? Philip would mock. First be yourself, then lead. You still don't know which Charles you are. But what was truly shocking was the father-son dynamics during Charles's meeting with Diana and the marriage process. In 1980, Charles had turned 30. Philip began pressuring about marriage. It's time for you to marry, he spoke seriously. The royalty needs an heir. And Diana Spencer is the perfect candidate. Charles was hesitant. I'm not sure I love her, Father, he confessed. Camilla will be forgotten. Philip spoke decisively with anger. She's a married woman, would create scandal. Diana is young, clean, suitable. Love comes later. Elizabeth also supported Philip on this matter. Diana will be loved by the public, she explained. She'll fix the royal family's image. Think of your duty, Charles. Charles was experiencing internal war. His heart was with Camilla, but his family wanted Diana. Maybe Father is right, he tried to convince himself. Duty is more important than love. I can be happy with Diana. But as the wedding approached, his doubts increased. He tried to open up to Philip one more time. Will I really be happy with Diana? He asked. Philip's answer was harsh and clear. Happiness is a luxury, he said coldly. You weren't born to be happy. You were born to serve. Marry Diana, do your duty, don't be spoiled. When Charles's marital problems began after the wedding, Philip wasn't surprised at all. I told you so, he thought to himself. Love marriage is a fantasy. Duty marriage is reality. But Charles's unhappiness was gradually increasing. Problems between him and Diana were growing. Father forced me into this marriage, he blamed Philip. What do I do now? Philip was merciless. What you'll do is clear, he said definitively. You'll continue your marriage. Private problems won't reflect on the public. You'll act if necessary. You'll protect this family's image. Charles was in despair. When he returned to Camilla, Philip was very angry. Stop this scandal immediately, he shouted. Show respect to Diana. Don't disgrace the family. But love? Charles tried to begin. Love? Philip asked sharply. Do you know what love is? Do you know responsibility? You've reached 40. You still behave like a teenager. This was exactly when everything changed. Because with Diana's death, the blame wars between father and son would begin, and Charles would make his first real rebellion against his father. When the news of Diana's death arrived, Philip and Charles were in the same room. Philip immediately went into crisis management mode upon receiving the news. We must take action, he said coolly. Control the media, protect the image. We must think of the children. Charles was in shock. Diana is dead, he kept repeating. She's really dead. Philip saw his son's emotional state as weakness. Pull yourself together, Charles, he scolded. Now is the time to be strong. Put your personal emotions aside. But Charles objected to his father for the first time. Personal emotions? He asked angrily. She's William and Harry's mother. My wife. How can you say no emotions? Philip didn't expect this explosive reaction from Charles. Being emotional doesn't solve anything, he said harshly. You have to be practical. The public, the press, the royalty are waiting. Crying is a third-class luxury. Charles had never been as angry at his father as he was now. Didn't you feel anything, father? He shouted. About Diana's death? Weren't you sad at all? Or are you a robot? Philip's face tensed. I know how to control myself, he said coldly. You still haven't learned. That's why you'll never be a real king. This statement deeply wounded Charles. A real king? He asked painfully. A king in your mind means a robot then? Someone who feels nothing, only does duty? If that's the case, I don't want such kingship. Philip was shocked by his son's rebellion. Don't be disrespectful to me, he shouted. I raised you. I taught you how to be strong. And this is how you thank me? Charles could no longer be stopped. Being strong? He yelled. Is killing my emotions being strong? Being cold to Diana being strong? Staying away from Camilla being strong? You ruined my life, father. Philip's patience overflowed. I ruined your life? He asked angrily. You're a prince. You'll be king in the future. All opportunities, all privileges are yours. And I ruined your life. Ungrateful. Charles burst into tears. Privilege? He asked through tears. Is never being happy a privilege? Not being able to marry the woman I love a privilege? Not being able to live my own personality a privilege? This isn't privilege, father. This is prison. Philip softened a little when he saw his son's tears, but he still spoke harshly. Life isn't easy, Charles, he said in a calmer voice. Especially our life. Responsibilities came with birth. You can't escape from this. Charles shook his head. I don't want to escape, he said in an exhausted voice. I just want to be myself. Not the Charles you want. After this conversation, a cold war began between father and son. For months they didn't speak to each other. Elizabeth tried to mediate. You're both right, she comforted. But it's time to understand. Try to understand each other. Philip had to begin tolerating Charles's relationship with Camilla. If he behaves carefully, he set his condition. If there's no scandal, I can turn a blind eye. But he was still against the idea of marriage. Give up the idea of marriage, he constantly warned. The public won't accept it. It would be a disaster for the royalty. Charles, however, was becoming increasingly determined. I can make my own decisions now, he challenged Philip. I'm a grown man. My happiness matters too. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet, because in the early 2000s, Charles's decision to marry Camilla and Philip's final ultimatum would start the final battle between the two men. In 2005, Charles was 56 years old. He could no longer endure his father's pressure. It was time to announce his final decision to Philip. I'm going to marry Camilla, father, he said with determination. I've made my decision. Philip's face reddened with anger. No, he shouted. The royal family can't bear this scandal. Disrespect to Diana's memory. The public will never forgive you. Charles tried to stay calm. I love Camilla, he said slowly. I'm happy with her. I can't spend the rest of my life alone. Diana would want me to be happy too. Philip couldn't accept this last sentence. Don't mention Diana's name, he screamed. Diana was unhappy because of that woman. Now are you going to dance on Diana's grave? Charles's patience overflowed. Enough, father, he shouted. Camilla isn't responsible for Diana's unhappiness. The marriage you forced is responsible. My trying to kill my own feelings is responsible. And you're responsible too. Philip was shocked. I'm responsible, he screamed. I tried to protect the royal family. I tried to keep you on the right path. And you blame me? Yes, I blame you, Charles shouted. All my life you forced me on the wrong path. You never valued my happiness. You never accepted my personality. You tried to make me a robot. Philip jumped to his feet. Robot? He asked angrily. I taught you to be strong. I taught you discipline. I taught you responsibility. And you call these robot? Being strong doesn't mean not feeling, Charles yelled. Discipline doesn't mean accepting unhappiness. Responsibility doesn't mean killing yourself. You never understood these, father. Philip took a deep breath. What I don't understand, he said in a cold voice, is how you can be so selfish. You're not bigger than the royal family. Your duty is bigger than your happiness. If you marry Camilla, you're not my son. Charles froze. What did you say? He whispered. You heard correctly, Philip said harshly. Either you do your duty or you're not my son. The choice is yours. Charles looked into his father's eyes. Then I'm making my choice, he said calmly but determinedly. I will marry Camilla. And if this doesn't satisfy you, then I'm not the son you wanted anyway. Philip's face went white. Get out of my room, he whispered, and don't come back. Charles walked out of the room with his head held high. After this conversation, they didn't speak for months. Elizabeth was very upset. The family is falling apart, she cried. Please find a solution. William and Harry were also worried. Grandfather and father aren't talking? They asked Charles. What happened between them? Charles tried to explain. Your grandfather and I have different views, he said diplomatically. But this is temporary. But internally, he was hopeless. Maybe I really stopped being his son, he thought. Maybe he never loved me anyway. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail. Because Elizabeth's secret mediation efforts and Philip's fear of aging would create the last opportunity to bring two stubborn men together. In autumn 2005, Elizabeth put a special strategy into action. She began talking to Philip and Charles separately. To Philip, "You're getting old, darling," she said gently. "Do you want to lose Charles forever? He's your only son." Philip was proud but worried. "He chose," he spoke stubbornly. "I didn't choose him. He found Camilla more important than our family." "But he loves you too," Elizabeth explained. "He just wants to be understood. He wants to be accepted. Did you ever give him a chance to be himself?" Philip thought about this question. Maybe Elizabeth was right. Maybe he had been too harsh. Elizabeth also talked to Charles. "Do you want to lose your father?" she asked. "He's aging too. He may have made mistakes, but he loves you. He tried to protect you in his own way." Charles's eyes filled with tears. "He never accepted me, Mother," he said painfully. "No matter what I did, it was never enough. He always wanted me to be someone different." "Maybe you should try to understand him too," Elizabeth said softly. "He was beaten by his own father too. He never learned how to show love. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love." After much waiting, the first step came from Philip. He knocked on Charles's door. "May I come in?" he asked in an unusually gentle voice. Charles was surprised, but opened the door. "Of course, Father." Both felt awkward. They were face to face for the first time in months. Philip began to speak reluctantly. About the marriage with Camilla, he began hesitantly. Maybe I opposed too harshly. Charles couldn't believe what he was hearing. Really, Father? He asked in amazement. Philip spoke proudly but sincerely. You're a grown man, he said slowly. You can make your own decisions. Your happiness matters too. Tears flowed from Charles's eyes. Thank you, Father, he said emotionally. Getting your approval was very important to me. Philip was also moved. I apologize too, he said with difficulty. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I never tried to understand you. Charles wanted to hug his father, but hesitated. Philip saw this hesitation and for the first time opened his arms. Father and son hugged for the first time in decades. Both were crying. I love you, Father, Charles whispered. I love you too, son, Philip replied. After this hug, everything changed. They still had disagreements, but now they were talking. Philip began to accept Camilla. If you're happy, he said to Charles, I'm happy too. Philip came to Charles's wedding. He treated Camilla kindly. You made my son happy, he said to her. I'm grateful for that. What you've seen so far is nothing. Because Philip's aging and health problems would completely change the power balance between father and son and give Charles the opportunity to prove he was a grown man. The 2010s began to pass difficultly for Philip. Age was advancing, energy was decreasing. Charles now felt more confident. He defended his own ideas about environmental issues, modern royal understanding. To Philip, I'm going to be a different kind of king, Father, he said openly. Different from your generation. More open, more accessible. Philip no longer objected. You know best, son, he would answer. Your time has come. I can only give advice. Charles noticed this change in his father. Father is listening to me now. He was amazed. He values my ideas. Finally, I'm getting respect. In 2020, Philip's health deteriorated further. He had to be hospitalized. Charles visited every day. How are you, Father? He asked worriedly. I'm fine, son, Philip said in a weak voice. You take care of royal affairs. This responsibility is yours now. Charles held his father's hand. You're still needed here, he said lovingly. I need your advice. Philip smiled. You know more than me now, he said proudly. You've carved your own path. I don't want to misdirect you. These words greatly affected Charles. You didn't misdirect me, Father, he said sincerely. You tried to make me strong. You were right in your own method. I was right in my own method too. We're both right. Philip saw his son's maturity. You've really grown up, he said happily. Now you'll be a real king. Charles had waited his whole life to hear this approval from his father. Thank you, Father, he said through tears. I couldn't have reached this point without you. You won't believe it. But Philip's death in 2021 wasn't Charles's greatest loss, but his greatest freedom, because now he could reign not in his father's shadow, but in his own light. At Philip's funeral, Charles was in the front rows. He had emotional moments in his speech. My father raised me strictly, he said to the crowd, but this strictness made me strong. I couldn't have reached this day without him. I owe him a debt of gratitude. After the funeral, when Charles was alone, he thought, now I'm truly free, he thought. I don't have to account to anyone. I can be king in my own style. But at the same time, He felt loneliness. I'll miss Father's criticisms, he realized surprisingly. His challenges motivated me. Now I'm only responsible to myself. When Charles ascended to the throne as king after Elizabeth, he mentioned his father in his first speech. "My father, Prince Philip, taught me discipline," he said sincerely. "Sometimes we disagreed, but he made me the man I am today. His memory gives me strength." Now Charles was implementing his own royal style, active on environmental issues, closer to the people, more modern. Father would want differently, he sometimes thought. But I continue on my own path. He raised me strong. Now I use this strength in my own way. He was happy in his marriage with Camilla. Father had finally accepted, he remembered gratefully. Our last years were beautiful. We parted in peace. His relationship with William was very different from his father. I won't be harsh like my father, he had decided. I'll allow William to carve his own path. But I'll also raise him strong. I'll strike a balance. One evening alone in the palace, Charles looked at his father's portrait. "Father, this isn't the king you wanted," he spoke to the portrait. "But this is the king you raised. I hope you're proud." The portrait, of course, didn't answer, but Charles felt a peace. He had finally found peace with his father's memory, and so the decades-long father-son war had ended. Two different generations, two different characters, two different concepts of royalty. But in the end, love had won. Charles was now both strong and himself. Philip's discipline and Charles's emotionality had merged. The perfect king formula had been found. Strict but compassionate, strong but understanding, traditional but modern. Exactly the king England needed. Philip's spirit was at peace. He had finally understood that he raised his son correctly. Charles was also at peace. He had finally felt his father's love.